Okay, guys, I am so sorry. I don't know what on earth is going on with StreamYard. I checked into my thing and nobody nobody my entire thing that I set up was just completely missing. So actually, let me also sign on to Podbean. Okay. So all right, so I'm on Podbean as well. So I'm not really sure what on earth happened, but with Podbean, not Podbean, StreamYard, I set something up and it did not register in any shape, form, or fashion. So when I went to sign in, um, my entire live stream was missing. So I do apologize for that. I don't know I really don't know what's going on with this. So, so I'm going to try to put in here the Podbean link since it's not working. Let me see if I can put some comments in here. Okay, so guys, I'm going to put in the comments if you want to join me on Podbean to ask a question. There it is. So we're gonna see how long it takes people to get here because unfortunately, I think whatever StreamYard did really messed up my entire. How do I have a Podbean account on? That's weird. It's saying that I was logged into a different account. So anyway, I am trying very hard to. I tell you what, technology sometimes is just a pain in the you know what. But we're here now. So today's topic, we're going to be doing Aster yellow. So, excuse me, Aster yellows. And I'm really, wait a minute, I do have a Podbean account. Oh, gosh. Okay, guys, I'm so confused right now because I'm showing. Hi, G Mama Grows. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. For some strange reason, my StreamYard isn't showing the actual link. That I actually set up something, and so it looks like I have more than one StreamYard account, which is really kind of weird. So I don't know. So I see you found me, so I'm hoping other people have found me and just went to the YouTube main page because it's yes, yes, there is a link in the chat. That if, for example, I'm doing a podcast right now. This is a live podcast tonight, and so if you want to call in, like actually call in to talk to me to ask a question, that link is to Podbean. So Podbean, it's an app you have on your phone, but the thing is you can actually call in a question. So that's what that link is for. So apparently it's just that I guess with StreamYard, it looks like because I have a Google account, somehow that's also giving me a StreamYard account. So it looks like I created this particular podcast under I guess my other account. So I'll have to sort it out later, but this is what I just I just don't like this. So anyway, Well, we're here now, and I'm sure the other people who are on YouTube can see, will be able to see me once they come in. So anyway, tonight's episode is on Aster Yellow. And Aster Yellow is, oh, yes, that it is a nice way to chat live. Um, Especially because with Aster Yellows, I'm sure somebody somewhere is going to have a question. So that's what tonight was going to be on. So Aster Yellow is, if you guys were with me live a couple weeks ago, you probably remembered that I was talking about the fact that I had seen um, echinacea one echinacea that had damage. Well, that damage was Aster Yellow, and so I'm doing a presentation on it because there's a lot of confusion in terms of what Aster Yellow actually is. And so to help us out with this, I actually did a slideshow. So we're going to see if this slideshow actually will work today. So I'm going to hit present. So let's see okay, so we're going to go to, y'all, this is killing me. This is killing me. Okay, hang on for a second. Let me make sure this is, delete this. Okay. Because this isn't going to be fun if I can't share my screen with you guys. Here we go. Okay, guys. Woo! Oh, today is a rough day. I gotta be honest with you, it's a rough day. Okay, so today we are going to be going over Aster's Yellow. So let me start the slideshow. So, Aster Yellows. A presentation by the Vintage Garden, New Jersey, which you guys knew that's what it was going to be. So first things first, why am I discussing this? And the reason I'm discussing this is because I found it in my garden. I have seen Aster Yellows in my garden now. I've seen it in local gardening groups, and I was doing some garden tours a few weeks ago, and I saw it in the garden in Pennsylvania. And so it seems to be fairly widespread, and a lot of people don't know what it is and that sort of thing. So I thought it would be a good idea to go over it. Not to mention, one thing I noticed is that there have been a lot of people who have been troubleshooting it wrong. And so, like I said, there have been a number of times other conditions were being diagnosed as Aster Yellow. And the people, they were trying to be helpful, but they were uninformed. And so I know, at least on one case, somebody who actually ripped out a perfectly healthy or perfectly fine and salvageable echinacea because the person they were listening to didn't know what they were talking about. And so, what is Aster Yellow? And of course, this is something gardeners everywhere would like to know. So, Aster Yellow. So, this is the definition I got. This is from the Missouri Botanical Garden. And so, Aster Yellows is a viral-like disease caused by PHYTOPLASMA, formerly called a mycoplasma-like organism. Um, Insects that suck the sap out of plants, especially the aster leafhopper, vector the disease. So, meaning that this particular bug is what's spreading. It's what's been spreading this disease from plant to plant. And so, Aster yellows is primarily transmitted by leafhoppers. And so what happens is this. You can have a leafhopper, the bug doesn't necessarily have the disease, but when it feeds on a plant that's infected with Aster yellows, it becomes infected with the phytoplasma, and the bug is going to remain infected throughout its life. And so the phytoplasma cells multiply, causes an infection in the insect's salivary glands within 1 to 3 weeks. And then what ends up happening is that leaf hopper feeds on a healthy plant. And because they're sucking on, these stems and leaves and whatnot, they inject the phytoplasma cells into the plant phloem, and susceptible plants will be symptomatic within 10 to 40 days. So this is the foe, ladies and gentlemen, the Aster leafhopper. So now y'all know what it looks like. So if you see that bug, do something about it. So I know I use a lot of like scientific terms. So let's talk about what a phytoplasma is. As a phytoplasma are obligate intracellular parasites, which are basically microparasites that are capable of multiplying and growing within the cell of a plant or insect host. Of plant phloem tissue and of insect vectors that are involved in their plant to plant transmission. So they are parasites. They live in the cell. They don't really inhabit, the soil. So if your plant gets it, it's not like it's putting something into the soil. It just stays within the plant. So this is a, intracellular parasite that cannot live outside of a plant or insect host. So what is phloem? Just a little bit of botany here. Phloem is the vascular tissue in plants that conducts sugars and other metabolic products downward from the leaves. So what plants does Aster yellows infect? And hang on a second, guys. Okay. So let me actually go back so I can actually see everybody here. Or I'm going to stop sharing right quick. So Aster yellow affects, and one of the things I've seen being put out there is that it only affects plants in like the Asterae family. So black-eyed Susans and Echinacea, that sort of thing. But it actually affects a lot of more, and that affects a lot more plants, which is why I'm doing this presentation. Um, yeah, I know it is awful. It truly is awful. So it affects a lot of plants. In fact, it affects about 300 different types of plants. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get word out here, because the plants that are on this list, it's annuals, perennials, and even fruits, like not so much fruits, but like vegetables that are affected. And so if you're only looking at echinacea or things like rudbeckia, you can be missing the fact that it's actually in other plants and you may not even recognize it. So let me go back into my slideshow. And we are going to talk about the plants that it affects. So I'm going to show you the plants that I know I have in my garden. And so you guys can, see how many of these you have in your garden. So the flowers it affects. I'm going to read all of these because I am doing a podcast. And so with the podcast, I want uh, whoever's listening to be able to see everything or hear everything, even though they can't see it. So things like amaranth, anemone, asters, baby breath, black-eyed Susan, marigold, centaureas, that's like your cornflowers, china asters, chrysanthemums, hydrangeas, larkspur, lavender, lobelia, salvia, scabiosa, mullein, which is verbascum, pink, coreopsis, which is tickseed, cosmos, daisies, delphiniums, English daisies, nasturtium, nemesia, petunias, phlox, sapoglossus. I have some of that this year. Then there's like thrift, which I planted this year, snake root, white strawflower, sunflower, and sweet pea. Then we have decorative tobacco, which is, I believe, Nicotiana, violets and pansies, stock, zinnia, chamomile, dandelion, feverfew, globe thistle, goat's beard, gaillardia, gladiolus, gloxina, and godetia. Okay, so I'm sure I slaughtered that one. But those are the flowers. Now let's talk about oh, and there's vegetables, and I forgot to do a slide. So the vegetables, we're talking about things like lettuce, carrots, potatoes, a lot of the brassicas. So actually, you could probably even affect tomatoes. So there's a lot of things. When I started looking at the list, I realized there's a lot of things in my garden that actually can potentially get this disease. So when I started thinking about it, I was like, if I didn't know any of this stuff and I wasn't paying attention, I could really be in a situation where my entire garden is decimated simply because I was seeing on from people in various gardening groups that it only affects certain types of flowers. And what I'm realizing is I have a ridiculous amount of flowers in my garden that have the potential to be affected. So the question I'm sure a lot of people have is, what does it look like? And this is where this is how we get into problems. So I'm going to show you what I had in my garden, and this, from what all the pictures and stuff that I've seen online, this is pretty much a classic presentation of how it looks. So this right here, and I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. You probably can't. But this right here is a classic presentation. You can see a little bit of the flowers, but the big thing I'm really drawing your attention to here is the leaves. As you can see, the leaves, some of the leaves are starting to look chlorotic, and that's like a classic presentation. We also see brown spots, like burn spots, like that. Once again, it's a classic presentation. That's from the leaf hopper feeding. But like, for example, the way this leaf looks, with the lighter, it's got intraveinal chlorosis. It looks like iron tone, quite frankly. Not iron tone, iron deficiency. Well, actually, more like magnesium deficiency because it's at the base of the plant, whereas iron deficiency tends to affect the newer leaves, or if you're at closer to the top. But that's something that you're going to notice on the plant. The other thing is, look, this is like the flower head. As you can see, the cone itself is bright green. There's some petals on it. Those are also bright green. In case you guys were wondering, this was like the classic white cone flower. So once again, that's how I knew it was a problem. I do have some green cone flowers, and we're going to get into that because sometimes it makes it a little tricky if you have green ones. But the green ones are all in the promenade garden. This one was in the white section, so it was clearly obvious that this is not the white cone flower that I planted. And last but not least, I took a picture from this angle. As you can see, when you look at the little ray petals, first off, those are green, and this is supposed to be white. So obviously those petals are very stunted. They're really short. And then on top of the green cone, which is not supposed to be that color, you see these green tufts. And I forgot what the technical term for those tufts are, but that once again is a classic presentation of a coneflower with aster yellow. The head turns different colors. There's deformities, and there's chlorotic foliage. So I know most of you guys, oh, and here's another picture. And this one, this is a really great picture of the actual flower head, not so much of the leaves, but you can see just how deformed the cone on it is. It's just got that's what I meant when I said there's little tufts like sticking out everywhere. So I know most people are going to want to know, like, how do you treat it? Well, there's no treatment. If your plant gets that, it's going to be in the it changes. It's in the plant. There's no way. There's no insecticidal soap. There's no, like, you can't spray anything. The plant, you just have to get rid of the plant, because the thing is, if you leave the diseased plant, if you have leaf hoppers that come that are not diseased, the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to start the cycle over of the feeding, the leaf hopper feeding on that, getting the disease, and then taking it somewhere else into your garden. Okay, so but wait, when you're troubleshooting, make sure it's not one of these other similar looking conditions. And this is one of the reasons I also did this presentation, because you can have other things that have mimic some parts of aster yellows that is not aster yellows. So let's go through that. So the first thing is herbicide damage, and the second thing is mite damage. Okay, so let's go through these two things. So how to rule out whether or not it's an herbicide? So just so you know, if for example you or somebody else is spraying with herbicide, depending upon the herbicide, it can cause stunting and deformate and I don't even know if deformation is the correct word. It can cause your plants to be deformed. And that's the thing is that, when you see those deformity and the stunting in a plant, is it aster yellows or not? Because in some ways, and especially depending upon the plant, it can mimic aster yellow. Like for example, with potatoes is one of those things. If it gets aster yellow, the leaves curl and that sort of thing. And that's what happens if you were to spray it with excuse me, herbicide. So it's one of those things you just have to be careful, pay attention. So things you want to rule out, how you rule out the herbicide, is number one, is there more than one type of plant affected? So, things like I'm trying to remember something that wasn't affected by it. Like for example, dahlias. Like my dahlias aren't affected by it. Let's see, what are some of the other things that I have? Um, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank here. Like celosia is not affected by it. So if you see a bunch of different types of plants, like or for example, penstemon's not on that list. If you see a bunch of different plants affected by it, then more likely than not, it's herbicide. If you notice that you have the symptoms appearing in only one part of the plant or portion of the plants, once again, that's more of an indicator that's in herbicide. Um, Aster yellows affects the entire plant. You've ruled out nutrient deficiencies or other virus and pests. So, for example, I think I mentioned that those leaves look chlorotic, like it had an iron deficiency. Well, I know it's not an iron deficiency because my well water is iron. I have a lot of iron in my water, so iron deficiency is not something that I typically see. Um, Other viruses. Well, for example, or pests, like for example, we're going to talk about mites and that sort of thing. So if you've ruled out all that other stuff, and that it may be herbicide, like, obviously, if you know that your neighbor sprayed herbicide, a week or so ago, I mean, obviously that's pretty fairly close in time, but sometimes, people could be spraying herbicide at a distance, but because it's a windy day, it carries onto your property. And then let's talk about mite damage. So the difference between mite damage and aster yellows is the number one, it affects only the seed head, which is the cone portion of the blossom, and presents as tufted portion of the cone. So basically, those little abnormal tufts that I was showing you, you'll get those. Now, a lot of times they're not green, and that's the thing. Aster yellows it turns the cone flower tufts green, whereas with mite damage, it may not be green, it could be some other color, but it's the cone that's affected. The ray petals at the bottom will still be their normal color, and also the rest of the foliage will be fine. Okay. So, and once again, the tufts, the rosette-like tufts, can be green or reddish green, elongated, rosetta-like tufts of stunted and distorted flower parts that sprout from the tops or the sides of the cone. But once again, it's astragallo tends to just be hardcore green. And once again, like I said, with mite damage, the ray petals are not going to be affected. The foliage is not going to be affected. The stems are not going to be affected. Whereas with aster yellow, the flower, like the cone, the ray petals, the stem, everything is going to be affected on the plant. And I forgot that's exactly, foliage and stems are not affected. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Okay. So actually, you know what? Before I do that, let me actually take some questions. Hang on a second. Let's see. Do I have any questions? Okay, so I'm gonna take some questions right now. So G Mama Girl says, "Oh my goodness, I think I've seen this from bugs on my basil." Yeah, I forgot to look and see if basil could be affected. A lot of things are affected by it. Garden of Eden says, "Hello, how's it going?" Hi, Garden of Eden. It's going good. I'm doing a presentation on Aster yellow because that's a problem that's been popping up in New Jersey on people's coneflowers. Um, G Mama Gross says, "Those black spots is what made me suspicious." And you gotta and the chat are saying hello to each other. So yeah, and that's the thing. You have to pay attention to what's going on in your garden, your yard. Because everything starts looking, Aster's yellow looks different from plant to plant. And so this is one of those things you just got to be paying attention to what is actually going on in your garden. Okay. So let's go back to the presentation. So how to prevent Aspergillo? Number one, and listen, I know that's why y'all really came here today. I don't blame you because that's why I would have come here today too. So the thing is, eliminate the weeds that can harbor virus from one year to the next, and that's why you have to pull the plant and chuck it because once it gets it, it's going to stay in the plant. It's going to stay in the roots when the plant comes up. You're never going to get rid of it. But there are weeds such as clover, dandelion, purslane, plantain, Queen's Anne's lace, ragweed, and thistle. Um, these weeds get it, they harvest it, and so if you're like, if you got these weeds in your garden and and you start seeing, you know, aster yellows popping up in other things, this is one way to help um one way to get rid of it, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll be quite honest, I don't always pull my clover. I mean, I'll pull it, but I'm not as good as I should be about eradicating it because clover is nitrogen fixing, so it puts nitrogen back in the soil. So sometimes I tend to leave it a lot longer than I probably should. Dandelion, that's another one of the things I know for a lot of people will leave it for pollinators and that sort of thing. But once again, it could be harboring aster yellow. Let's see. The conditions are less prevalent in high heat. And let's see. You can also, I mean, you can't, high heat, we can't do anything about. But for those people who live in areas where like the temperatures are like throughout the summer is like 90s, 100 degrees, you're probably not going to see it that much because it, the bugs and plants will have it, but it's just like it kind of inactivates it at higher temperatures. So I think probably one of the reasons I didn't see it last year is because now that I think about it, last year in June and July, we had 2 months of 90-degree temperatures. So we weren't seeing it. Um, with Aster's yellow, like obviously you want to deal with the little leaf hopper issue. So it's got natural predators like green lacewings, ladybugs, assassin bugs. So, making sure you have, beneficial insects. And then, of course, you can use organic sprays like horticultural oil, like Captain Jack's. Like Captain Jack's has a number of types of sprays that'll handle leaf hoppers. Neem oil. There's an orchard spray by Bonide insecticidal soap. Bonide also has called 8. I've seen some things saying you can use diatomaceous earth. And what was another one? And if you have a real problem with leaf hoppers, you might want to try something like perethrins or that sort of thing. And so troubleshooting tips. So first things first, you got to be out and about in your garden regularly. I didn't know there's so many people who put plants in and they walk away from their garden and they don't come back for months. You got to be out and about in your garden regularly because you want to make sure you're seeing problems and you're seeing them early. The last thing you want to do is be out and about in your garden and you come back 2 years, see, not 2 years, like 2 months later, and Aster yellows is taking over, your daisies, your black-eyed Susans, your coneflower, your chrysanthemums, your asters, pretty much, your phlox, like all your vegetables, because at that point you're literally going to have to rip out everything in your garden. Now, if you have a small garden, maybe that won't be too bad. Like me personally, I have a huge garden. If I have to start ripping out that much, that's a really expensive problem that I don't want to have to fix. The other thing is pay attention to what's going on in local gardening groups. The reason I was paying attention to Aster's yellow is because oh, I'm checking Podbean, guys. So hi, it's I hello. I'm trying to think who's this. I do Phasey. How are you? If you have a question, you can call in. There is a call in button on your app, so you can call in and ask a question if you have one. I'm checking comments on here and questions on here as well as on YouTube. But yeah, like I said, you got to pay attention to what's going on in gardening groups, especially the local ones. Aster Yellows got on my radar because this year I saw somebody who lives in my town post that, oh, hey, what is this growth on here? And somebody said, "Oh, hey, that's Aster, Aster Yellows." And then a couple more people started getting it. And some of the people I knew round about where they lived in relation to me. And so once again, this is carried by, pest. And obviously leafhoppers aren't going to just stay in my yard. They're going to go other places. And so when I saw more and more people starting to find it, like this one person said they had to, pull 13 plants, I was on the lookout. So I was, patrolling my garden regularly. And so when I caught it, um, you know, I've been checking it since then. I mean, it can take between 10 to, it can take a long time to form, like, 10 to 40 days. So I keep checking it. I haven't seen anything else. I've been checking the other plants that I know are susceptible to it. And so I'm just monitoring my garden very carefully. I think I got the only two plants affected, but time will tell. But you got to pay attention. If I hadn't seen that, I wouldn't have realized that was an issue in my area, and I probably wouldn't have been paying attention, and it probably would have affected more plants in my garden. Um, know what aster yellows looks like in other plants. I'll be quite honest, I don't have potatoes. And some of the, like, for example, carrots and that sort of thing. I had carrots. I didn't notice any, foliage damage or anything, but it presents differently in other plants. And like, so for example, I looked at a picture of a marigold that had aster yellows, and I'll be quite honest, it did look like herbicide damage. It also looks like maybe it had dried out, and it just I would not have looked at that and said, "Okay, that's aster yellows." And so, when you have other plants, like if you start seeing, your plants looking deformed and that sort of thing, look it up, Google it, so you understand what it looks like. Because if I had seen it in, like, because I saw it in my echinacea, I was checking things like my China asters, which were nearby or in the same bed. I was checking, I was checking my gladiolus that are in the same bed. I was checking, everything else to see, was I seeing anything that started looking sick and not, and like just ailing. Because and another thing is, maybe the other plant will develop it first before it gets to your coneflower. So just make sure you know what it looks like, because once you see it in one place, then you're going to need to start patrolling your garden a little bit more vigorously. The other thing is, know what your plants and flowers are supposed to look like in every stage of development. And the reason that I say that is because one thing that I noticed was that this one woman in one of the groups didn't know what it looked like. She posted a picture and she said, "Oh, I think my echinacea, I think this is the beginning stage of aster yellows." And this one, like I said, well-meaning person jumped in and said, "Oh, yeah, that's the start. You should go ahead and throw it out." Now, I didn't see the comment until later. And so because I didn't see the comment till later, I was like, "Oh no." I was like, "Oh no," because at the end of the day, it wasn't aster yellow. What she was looking at was the normal way that an echinacea opens, but apparently neither she nor the person who answered the question, apparently, I'm not sure how, but apparently they've never seen a newly budded echinacea start to open. And so she was like, "Oh, the petals are deformed." No, the petals aren't deformed. Like when echinacea first start opening, the ones that are like, for example, like for example the white swan, the purple ones, the more traditional ones, and even some of the ones that are like the double scoop, when the ray petals start coming out, they're very thin and tiny, and they kind of unfurl, and that's how they normally look. Now the ones that I have that are green, they kind of look different when they're opening. So once again, know how your plants are supposed to look. I don't know, I did come back and say, hey, by the way, that's not aster yellows. That's how echinacea look when they're the buds are starting to open, the leaves are going to unfurl. Don't throw the plant away. Now the person never commented in terms of whether or not she threw it out. So I don't know if I got to her before she threw the plant out. But you got to know that, like, the echinacea, as they age out, the colors of the echinacea itself change. Certain ones of my echinacea, as they age out, like the cone does develop a little bit of green, but it's not aster yellow. That's just how it looks. Now if I didn't know how it looked, I probably would be like, oh my gosh, it's turning green, it must be aster yellow. But because I've been paying attention, I know what it's supposed to look like. And the other thing is just, just speak like, just slow down, and don't like do the knee jerk reaction of like, just let me rip it out. Like, you know, troubleshoot, look at the leaves, look at the foliage, see, do you see any bug damage, that sort of thing before you decide to pull it out. Actually, I think a lot of extension offices can actually test for aster yellow. So for example, if you have, let's say you catch mite damage and like the ray petals have already fallen off and you're really not sure, and especially if like because like with mite damage, you don't see foliage. You can probably send it to your county extension and they can run a test and tell you before you actually throw it out. So just something for you to consider. Okay, did it take me back to the beginning? It took us back to the beginning, y'all. So let's whip through this really quickly. um, And of course, last but not least, if you spot it, handle it and take measures promptly. So if you see it, pull it, spray, orchard sprays, just do something. Patrol your garden. Because the one that I spotted the night we did that live, I thought when I was digging that one out, I was looking, and I noticed when I got to like across the walkway in one of the middle garden sections, I saw some green, and I'm like, "Oh shoot, I didn't have any green echinacea over there." It was one of the Cheyenne spirits, and sure enough, it had aster yellow, so I pulled that one. So those thus far, only two have been affected. Once again, I've been checking it, and I haven't seen it pop up with any of the other echinacea. I checked my asters, I checked my chrysanthemums because y'all know I love my chrysanthemums. Um, I've been just like I said, I've been patrolling the garden to make sure I don't see any um, other deformed plants. So anyway, guys, that is it for the presentation. So let me stop sharing. So the question I have, does anybody have any questions? Yes, no? Okay, maybe nobody has any questions. Let me check on does anybody on Podbean have any questions? Okay, it doesn't look like anybody has any questions. So anyway, guys, that's it for this one. If you guys have any questions on um Astergello, give me, you can leave a comment on the video. I'm on Instagram all the time. So if you guys want to message me there, I'm trying to think. I'm also on Facebook as the Vintage Gardener NJ. I do do my messages and read my messages there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I don't see any questions on here at all. Did I just do such a good job that y'all have no questions? 'Cause that makes me a little nervous when nobody's got any questions. Um, but yeah, it looks like that's it. So I'm just gonna wait a couple seconds just to make sure that everybody, if somebody walked away from their computer, they can ask a question. Um, let's see. I think next weekend I'm going to I'm gonna do a cooking video, I think. I think I'm gonna do a cooking video. If you guys, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one show. It's called The Chef's Life with Vivian Howard. It came on years ago on PBS, but she did a blueberry barbecue sauce and it's not tomato based. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna go get some blueberries and do a cooking video. I like it. It's not like a traditional barbecue sauce because you can use it as a barbecue sauce, but, like, for example, I make, like, white pizza and I drizzle it on it, and it's so good, and I like even, like, if I eat any type of sandwich, I will dip it in it. It's absolutely delicious. It's kind of like along the lines of, like, a balsamic vinaigrette, except way better. So it's one of those things you can do in a crock pot. So I am making so guys, I'm coming on very nicely with the rose garden. My irrigation guy is coming out tomorrow because he give me an estimate. I have to run 6 additional spigots outdoors. And so I'm really excited about that. And then I can start solarizing the lawn and that sort of thing. I have, let's see, 12 roses currently, and I have another 9 on order, and I'm going to be ordering a few more for next year, a lot more for next year. I'm not going to make, I actually, oh, you know what? I forgot. I also ordered some boxwood plugs. I found a place on Etsy that does boxwood plugs. And so they're really, really small. But I think but you know what? Boxwood can take a while to grow, but it really depends upon where you live because I had some boxwood and I was like, "Oh, I thought these only grew a couple inches each year," but apparently it's like if you're like zone 5 and above, they actually can grow pretty quickly. So I'm hoping that that'll be the case for me. So I think I've ordered like 24 and I'm just waiting for them to replenish their stock so that I can continue to get more because you can buy them in like they had like sets of like 20 and I really need to buy more sets of 20 because I do need a lot of them. But I'm really excited about that. I know for those of you guys who joined me on the live last week, I told you about some of the ones that I was getting, and um, I guess probably in the winter I'll do a complete like slideshow presentation on all of the roses that I'm getting and like the care and that sort of thing because it's I love roses and I know that for a lot of people it can be very hard to deal with. So let me go back in. Okay, so I see no questions anywhere. So since I see no questions, I'm going to go ahead and add end the broadcast. So like I said, next week will be a cooking video, and next week, hopefully, StreamYard will cooperate with me. So that I'm not trying to find like I because this my links were all off today because when I logged in, it was like you don't have anything scheduled, and I'm like, but I have a link here. I have a link for this and it's not showing up. So I don't know. I guess it's just a quirk. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you next week where we're going to be doing some blueberry barbecue sauce. So I will, you know what? I'm going to try to post a recipe earlier. So that way, if you guys want to cook along with me, you can. And we'll go from there. Now, guys, it is going to require a crock pot. So obviously, I'm not going to finish the entire cooking video. I'm going to try to do some during the week, so that way I can show you what it looks like when it's finished, but we'll see. This will be a very long cooking this is a long recipe. So guys, I will see you in the next live, and I will be posting a video probably probably Monday night. I'm finally in my May videos, and so I'm gonna be trying to combine videos. I'm probably gonna make them a little bit longer, just so that I don't have the immense backlog. I can get rid of some of the backlog. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I will see you later.